Hi, everyone. Uh, Today's topic is emotional intelligence. Uh, a lot of people just simply call it EQ, emotional quotient. And we do have IQ quotient. Okay, as well as I mentioned in the IQ section, there is no emotional quotient. We have yet to come up with a test to do just that, like what? Emotional age over chronological age times 100. So we don't have that yet, right? Now, before we would embark on Goleman, Daniel Goleman's 1995 book on what entire book is on EI, emotional intelligence. Let us talk about what the precursor to this. Now remember, Maslow and Carl Rogers, they actually mentioned emotional intelligence. I will refer to them a bit later on. Okay. Now, in the early 1960s, a Stanford psychologist named Walter Mischel began a series of very famous experiments with snacks and kids. Now, Mischel told his subjects they could have one little treat now or two if they wait a while. So the results varied widely. Mischel and his co-author, I think it is named the Oslam Ostock. Anyway, they note in the book chapter, it's called A Handbook of Self-Regulation, the definitive psychology text on willpower. Okay, so the very idea of what delayed gratification baffled kids under 4 years old, but nearly 60% of 12 years olds were able to wait the full 25 minutes until when Mischel returned with the two promised sweets. Well, this one here is broadly referred to as the marshmallow experiment, famous marshmallow experiment. Now, take a look here. Delayed gratification baffled kids under 4. Now, remember Piaget's theory, 4. Sensory motor, 0 to 2. Intuitive or pre-operational stage, 2 to 7. So all those kids at 4 years old, they belong to this category. They are full of fantasies, full of illogical thinking, and emotionally, they are not yet mature, far from mature. Okay. However, 60% of those were 12 years old, and they were able to wait the full 2 minutes. So Mischel mentioned, okay, put the marshmallow in front of the experimental subject. He said, you could have one, those big, good-looking marshmallows, okay? So Mischel told his subject, now, you could have one now, okay? But if you wait for me, I will return in 25 minutes, okay? If you wait for me to return, you could have 2 more free treats altogether, okay, as the condition of the reward. So 4 years old, they couldn't resist the temptation, okay? Once the child is gone, they would just gobble down the big, good-looking marshmallow. But 60% of the 12 years old, they could wait. They waited until Michelle finally returned. And they got free big, good-looking marshmallows. Now, Michelle, he taught later he taught at Columbia University. He theorized that if he could focus attention on delayed reward, he could get kids to wait longer. So in some experiments, he kept the 2 treats visible. Okay, the marshmallow, and then the rewards. Okay, sometimes he also placed a single snack next to the 2 others to emphasize the bounty that patience offered. But he found that if the kid could see any of the treats, they broke down much faster. Oh my Lord, the temptation, holy smoke, okay? The physical presence of a cookie or a marshmallow seemed to allow what Michelle called its hot qualities. It's yummy consummatory immediacy, according to Michelle, okay, to overwhelm any cooling focus on doubled rewards in the future. So at the end of the chapter, Michelle Roth and Ostuck note disappointingly that psychologists still don't have an answer to the most pressing question regarding self-regulation of emotion, and one with great consequences for the entire people. So what is it? What can willpower be taught? That is to say, I will address this question later on. We can translate this question into, can emotion or can emotional intelligence be taught? Okay, I will come back to this. Okay, so then later, psychologists named his experiments as the marshmallow experiments to indicate the concept of delayed gratification. Okay? The concept of delayed gratification. Now, you should realize the following is that psychologists later, and also Michelle included, kids who exhibit the ability to delay gratification in order to have more rewards later on, psychologists follow them for 20-some years, okay? And they discovered the following, okay? They discovered the following. Those who could delay gratification versus those who could not. So let's take a look at those who could not. Okay? Those who could not. They in general, they were not successful in life. So in that they received they attained less wealth, and they had fewer years in education, okay? And police records they had more police records. Okay, for those who could delay gratification, the psychologists found them to be to be better in terms of life success. So what do I mean by that? Life success as in health, wealth, and emotional stability, education, and less criminal records, okay, stable marriage, that type of thing. So you see here that the importance of emotional control, okay, the importance of emotional control. All right, so let's take a look at this overhead. You have this. Okay? There are two aspects of emotional intelligence, EI, according to Daniel Goleman, 1995, and then he published quite a bit, okay, in emotional intelligence. All right, so he single-handedly raised the status of emotional intelligence, single-handedly. Okay? After his publication, especially after this book and several others that followed, psychologists began to began to share their interest in this, okay? And I will mention it as I move on. Now, from those famous marshmallow experiments, some psychologists call those experiments tests of ego strength. A test of ego strength. So how much ego strength do you have? Okay, that means how much you could regulate or control your emotions. Okay, so psychologists began to lift their heavy focus on IQ and began to concentrate on what has become quite popular nowadays, EI, emotional intelligence. Okay, so let's take a look at the most popular theories on emotional intelligence. Right? Goleman divided EI. Let me see if I could let you see everything. Okay, Daniel Goleman. He proposed two broad types of emotional intelligence: intrapersonal intelligence and interpersonal intelligence. All right. So now let's take a look at intrapersonal. Intrapersonal, it means what? It means within oneself. Okay, within oneself. Now, within oneself, self-awareness. What is it? The ability to know your own emotion. Okay, if you cannot recognize what you are feeling, how can you make choices about jobs, about relationships, about friendship, that type of thing? How can you communicate your feelings to others if you are not even aware of your own emotions? All right, so that's self-awareness. We have to We have to recognize our emotions. Okay, so this is what most people can do that. Okay, but then there is a small percentage of people who could not do that. Now, I'll give you an example. Serial killer, yes. For example, Paul Bernardo, okay, he cannot feel, okay, cannot feel other people's sufferings, okay? And of course, there are a lot of serial killers in the States. They have been heavily studied, okay? They don't feel anything, okay? They don't feel that you are suffering. So fortunately, only a very small percentage of people who belong to this category, okay? All right, the next one, self-management of emotion. Self-management of emotions. I take a look at, so using words I could highlight, okay? Self-management of emotions, particularly what negative emotions such as anger or depression, or anger management, right? I think there is a TV series on this topic, is that right? Who was it? I can't remember. Charlie Sheen, I can't remember. Now, the goal here is not to suppress feelings, okay? And then, but not to be overwhelmed by them either, okay? So self-management, you have to recognize your own emotion, and then you find ways to manage it. Say, for example, you are very angry, but then under some circumstances, you cannot show it. Is that right? You cannot show it. For example, when you are dating, I mean, for the first few times, even though you are very angry, I guess you are not what you are going to control it. You're not going to manifest your anger in front of your date. Is that right? I think so. I hope so. Peter Chow did that. Peter Chow, I still remember what I did this, okay? And but anyway, so now, but then what the goal is not to suppress feelings. Okay, you feel it, okay? But then what? You don't want to be most importantly, you don't want to be overwhelmed by them. Okay. You have to find a way to channel to channel the negative emotions, or you have to find ways to deal with it. Okay, deal with it positively. Okay, deal with it positively. All right. Now, self-motivation, the third one. Okay, this is sometimes this is called ego. This is called ego strength. Okay, the ability to focus energy and to persist, to control impulses, and to delay immediate gratification in order to reach important goals. Those who cannot, they likely experience failure in life, as I mentioned earlier. And for those who can, success in life is likely to be achieved. Now, I mentioned success in life in terms of receiving higher education, good health, more wealth, and emotional stability. Right? So it is self-motivation is that people with ego strength, they will be more successful. All right. Now, remember Sternberg, Robert Sternberg. He mentioned that people with higher IQ, they are they are very persistent, and they are devoted to what they are doing. Okay, remember the diagram, the bird one and the frog. Okay, persistence. Okay, here we have to self-motivate ourselves to develop ego strength and not to give up so easily. As ego strength, that one, not to do things that are not appropriate at the moment. Okay, so ego strength, that is very, very important. So interpersonal, the second category, interpersonal means what? Between human beings, okay? Between you and other people. So here we talk about what? Social skills, and also what? This is also called what? Interpersonal skills. Okay, how to handle relationship. Where's my cursor? How to handle relationships? How to what? How to make people want? How to make people want? Feel comfortable? Okay, when they interact with you or in your what? When you are among them. Okay. Now, remember, in Japan, Japan is what? Is not individualistic. Is that right? The country, Canada, and the States, and most Western democracies. Individualism is what? At the forefront. Now, but then of course here, during the pandemic, individualism can what? Can act in opposition to those medical guidelines. Okay, this is something like individualism at the what? At the extreme. And this is not good. Okay, this is not good. Okay, now Japan is what is society. It is what? Group oriented. Remember I discussed this one. It is group oriented. Okay, you have to belong to a group in order to be successful. Okay, so the Japanese, they develop very nice social skills, because if you don't do that, you automatically become an outcast. Okay, you automatically become an outcast. Okay? So that is what? That is not good. Okay? So that's social skills. Now, those of you, after you graduate from university, you have to work. And you have to work in what? In the workplace, you must develop interpersonal intelligence. How to deal with your co-workers, how to deal with your aggressive boss, okay? That type of thing. Okay, so you will have to what? Build up these skills. That means you will have to learn new skills. Okay, now learn new skills. That is to say, you learn how to what? How to gain emotional intelligence. All right. Now I will come back to this very important point, okay, later on. All right. The last one, okay, empathy. Empathy, okay, is to recognize what? Emotions in others. Something called walk in my shoes experience. You invite someone to walk in, or you walk in their shoes kind of experience. Okay, now look at what. Remember, I talked about one of the founders of humanistic psychologist, Carl Rogers. Remember him? Okay, Carl Rogers. His major theories. Look at him here. Is that he proposed 3 necessary and sufficient conditions for the promotion of learning, for the promotion of interacting with his patients, and for interacting with others nicely. Okay, the first condition is empathy. Okay? The first condition is empathy. Okay. Now remember, empathy is far more than sympathy. Sympathy means you identify that the person is not feeling good, that type of thing. But empathy is more than that. Not only that, you are also aware of the person's feelings, okay, positive or negative. You understand you understand how that person feels. You understand why the person does this, that type of thing. So empathy is far more than sympathy. Carl Rogers' second condition is for interacting with people, or for him to do psychotherapy, is unconditional positive regard. You lay no condition for positive regard. You always treat people well. You always look at the importance of other people's well-being, okay, with no condition attached. So this is called unconditional positive regard. And because of this here, Carl Rogers is known to be the kindest, okay, the kindest psychotherapist among all psychologists. Okay, so he is called a kind father, okay, or kind grandfather by his patient, okay, by his patient. And so this empathy, unconditional positive regard, okay, and the last one, okay, the third, okay, conditions is called congruence. That is to say, you have to know your true self, and you say according to your true self. All right. So that is you say what you think, and you do what you say. Okay, so that is congruence. That's to say, Carl Rogers realized that most people tend to project an image they think they ought to have, and then they act according to this created image. You see, so that's why it's just to avoid being discovered who they really are. Now, this is not good. Okay, this is not good, not healthy. However, a lot of people are doing that. Okay, so Carl Rogers focuses heavily on the true self. Okay, how can you learn about yourself, how to behave according to your true self. So this is congruence, okay, how to behave according to your true self. All right, then what? If we do this here, then what? People's self-concept as a feeling person will increase, okay? And self-direction in what? How to be the best you can be also increases. Positive attitude towards others will also increase, okay? And what? Then the positive one, the positive morale in the way what? In the way what you interact with other people also what? Also what? Increases. All right. Now, starting in 2006, okay, Harvard Medical School requires its students to shadow a patient in order for them to understand what makes a patient. Okay, now so this is what? This is the way to help what? To help medical doctors to what? To know what to have empathy, okay? To have empathy. So it is important, okay? Shadow them, follow them, try to put themselves in their shoes, in the patient's shoes, okay? So this is what Carl Rogers did this. Remember, Carl Rogers mentioned that he liked trading places with his patient, and hopefully he will learn more about the patient. Just ask the patient, am I doing it just the way you did it? Okay, that type of thing. Okay, so it is important to develop the skill to be able to empathize with people. All right, now from human resources of many Fortune 500 companies, it had been concluded that EI is twice as important as cognitive ability, that is IQ plus technical expertise combined. Right? So you see now what the importance of emotional intelligence as recognized by Fortune 500 companies. Okay, now you know how Japanese could channel employees' frustration over what their bosses did to them, or what their bosses decided what to do, what not to do. It is famous. Big Japanese companies, they have a room like a gym room, but it's not a gym room. It is a room full of bobo dolls, full of other things here, and you have the boss photos on top besides each apparatus. Okay, so that employees could actually go there and punch the bobo dolls or some other statues of that type of thing. It's just to release frustration, and the company encouraged them to do so. See that? This is a very good way to channel aggression, frustration. You see, you emerge kind of being able to keep your peace of mind. Is that right? being able to what? To stabilize your emotion. All right, so that is what? That is something good. But then what? North America, we have yet to see something like this. Okay, something like this. All right, now let's take a look here. Let's take a look here. You must have heard Peter Chow mention self-awareness. You have to learn how to be aware of your emotions. Okay, self-management. We are not born to what? To regulate our emotions. We have to what? Learn it. Okay? We have to watch how other people do it, and then what? We model after them. Okay, like what Bandura did a lot of this here, and he understands that what we will learn from what observing how other people are doing it. Okay, and then what a lot of time we are very successful, and then remember his famous experiment with watching observing children to play with the bubble doll. Okay, if the children had opportunity to watch an adult interacting aggressively with the bubble doll, children are likely to follow. Okay, self-motivation. We have to we have to motivate ourselves. We have to learn. We have to learn how to control how to control this, and we have to learn to have ego strength, or learn how to delay gratification. Now, look at delayed gratification for you people. In the marshmallow experiments, the delayed gratification, we are talking about a mere 25 minutes. All right? That's not too long, but then for young kids, of course, it's an eternity. Now, look at you guys. Okay? Look at you people. Okay? You come to university, then what? And the reward is 3-4 years down the road. Is that right? If you want to have a general degree, it takes you 3 years. Okay, an honors degree, 4 years. Okay, so within these 4 years, you will have to do what? You will have to do all this here, so that you have to actually delay gratification. You cannot party all the time. Let's say tomorrow you have an exam, okay? But then your friend, your good friends, they invite you to to a party, a nice, very nice party. Okay? You ask yourself the question: should I stay home and study, or should I go to the party first? And then And then I'll come back and I study half drunk. That type of thing, all right? You will have to do a lot of this kind of regulation control. Okay, you will have to build up your ego strength. Okay, well, let's say tonight, CSI 2 hours finale. Tomorrow you have Peter Chow's test. Are you going to spend 2 hours watching the finale, or you study? And you know Peter Chow's exam is going to be difficult, especially those of you who have taken my statistic courses. 1 or 2 of you have done that, okay? Ask them, okay? So you will have to, you guys have to do a lot of these interpersonal intelligence in order to reach your goal, in order to be successful. All right. Now, having said all this here, okay, let me tell you this. That means what? All in all, emotional intelligence can be learned. Isn't that nice? It can be learned. Now, unlike most formulation of IQ, I remember what Arthur Jensen, lots of those people, okay, our Philip Rushton in University of Western Ontario, couple of psychologists at York University, and also I think about what at least 40% of all psychologists studying IQ, they believe what a strong component of heredity. Okay, so that means some people are born smart, some are not. Okay? So according to them, IQ cannot be learned. That is what. That is, of course, that is not true. Is that right? That is not true. Otherwise, well, why do you go to college? Why do you go to university? Okay, but in order, remember IQ, the average IQ is 100, standard deviation 15. Okay, so one standard deviation like 15 is a lot. Okay? It's a lot. Now, so let's say if one wants to increase his or her IQ by 3 points, what would this person have to do? Knowing that most IQ tests, Stanford, Bernard Wexler, and a lot of other smaller IQ tests, they on all these tests logical, mathematical, and like analytical skills, and linguistic skills, verbal comprehension, right? Mostly these two. Okay, mostly these two. And in order to have a gain of 3 IQ points, you may have that person may have to study intensively for 6 months. So it is not easy. Okay? So, but then EI is different. EI can be learned, and it continued to be learned. So that's the big difference. Okay, that is the big difference. And also major say Fortune 500 companies at this point, they developed their own EI test instead of IQ test. They just abolish IQ test, knowing that it cannot predict performance, but EI can. Okay, EI can, emotionally intelligent can. So they want to hire people with high EI, okay, high EI. Now, so in positive psychology, now just take a look at all this here: self-awareness, self-management of emotions, self-motivation, social skills, empathy. Okay? You will see later on, all these are important in developing our positive well-being. They are important in developing our self-concept, our self-esteem, and they are important in developing a sense of self-efficacy. All right, so EI is important, but then But then it is considered now to be far more important than IQ. Okay, than IQ. So I think this is something you will all this you will encounter later on, and you will also now begin to realize that some let's say Van Dyck, so early on back in the 30s, okay, psychologists already realized that what the importance of what interpersonal intelligence, social skills, and then what humanistic psychology, Carl Rogers, and what and Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers especially what in empathy and in what self-awareness, okay, of course Maslow, motivation, okay, motivation. That's the same one. The humanistic psychologists, they have the following one concept, is that you be good and be the best you can be. This is good, right? So you be good and you be the best you can be. Thank you.